And so, in a conference call early this week with members of the kind of the right-wing group called Stand America, it's kind of E.W. Jackson's kind of political group, really. Former Senator Rick Santorum disputed the existence of a separation between church and state in the Constitution, dismissing it as a communist idea that had no place in American society. So a listener called into E.W. Jackson's radio show and told Santorum that, quote, a number of the things that the far left, aka the Democratic Party, and the president is pushing for and accomplishing actually accomplishes a number of the tenets of the Communist Manifesto, including the amnesty, the elevation of pornography, homosexuality, gay marriage, voter fraud, open borders, mass self-importation of illegal immigrants, and things of that nature, all evil, nasty things. Now, I see that would be quite easy for Santorum to go, well, maybe I agree with one or two of those things, but okay, fine. But no, he almost doubles down on that point. Santorum replied with, quote, the words separation of church and state is not in the US Constitution, but it was in the Constitution of the former Soviet Union. That's where it very, very comfortably sat, not in ours. Now, of course, technically, on a very literal interpretation of the First Amendment, it does not say separation of church and state. Those words in that order do not appear. However, it takes just a small, minuscule amount of intellect to interpret those words and find out that, yes, in fact, it does mean the separation of church and state in the First Amendment. And if you don't want to take my words for it, or anyone else kind of on this panel's words for it, then you can just look at the people who wrote the Constitution. And look at what Jefferson said, specifically regarding the First Amendment. So he said, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people which declared that their legislators should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. That is what the people who wrote the Constitution meant it for it to mean. They clarified it in later letters. Rick Santorum thinks that the Constitution, the very first kind of defining part, arguably, of the Constitution of America is communism at its core. So what do you guys make of Rick Santorum's interpretation of the First Amendment?
Rick Santorum. He's Michelle Bachmann in a pantsuit. I mean, come on. He is, when they call the left the far left, he is the far right. And the fact that he gets on these shows and says this nonsense and he gets any traction at all is kind of sad as a potential presidential contender. And let's be fair, he is one, which is just mind-boggling to me. And I just, to the communism part, he's wrong. I mean, like you said, minimal amount of brain power with the hamster going around the wheel to figure it out, but he doesn't even have that. I think the hamster fell off the wheel and is dying on the vine.
Yeah, I want to break Rick Santorum's argument down into two failures. Number one, if his interpretation is that the First Amendment doesn't have a separation of church and state because it never says separation of church and state in those exact words, then how does the Second Amendment protect your right to have an AR-15 if it never says AR-15 in those words? Like, if you're going to be an exact super, like, you have to say it as clear as day, like, no ambiguity at all, then, like, the Second Amendment might fail that test, even though it's commonly understood the Second Amendment protects your right to own a gun. Secondly, the communist point makes no sense because in communist countries, they get rid of the church, and the separation of church and state is meant to protect both of them. And it's not the same thing as the communists, as in communist countries, historical communist countries, where they get rid of religion altogether. And in America, it's meant to be beneficial to both parties. Like, so if Catholics ran the government, they couldn't persecute Protestants, and vice versa. So it's actually meant to protect religions like Rick Santorum's, although Rick Santorum's a Catholic, so I kind of messed up that example. So he's wrong on both accounts, and he's just a weirdo. Like, look at his face. He's one of those guys that's guilt on face alone and sweater vest.
Yeah, he's against the whole kind of pornography, and he has, I reckon, probably one of the most like deviant minds out there in politics. I reckon, I would suggest that he's into some real like sick sort of like there's some real niche porn out that's just for him. It involves like sweater vests and like being hit around the back of the head with a Bible or something. He's just some weird creepy guy. He's probably going to run in 2016, and he's probably going to do relatively well. I mean, he came like third overall or something. He won the Iowa caucus, I believe, in 2012. So he's probably going to feel confident, that he's in with a shot this time. He's going to fail, and he's basically he's the reason he said this stuff is because he thinks, oh, this will kind of really lock down the religious voters. It's like, yeah, but you're not going to win. Like, okay, you may be able to win a primary. You may be able to win a GOP primary. Just having the religious vote locked down, that ain't going to win you the national election. I don't see why all of these politicians, specifically on the right wing, just try to target their specific base, because you're not going to win just targeting your base.